Every day, millions of people ask, what is Scientology? Here's an idea. What if you just take a look?
Take for yourself.
What if you see for yourself
No one else can see.
who we are,
No one else.
what we believe,
Take for yourself.
and what we stand for? Our doors are open
See for yourself.
to all people of all faiths in every corner of the world.
Just look inside. You will know it when you see with your own eyes.
So what is Scientology?
See for yourself.
Maybe it's time to look and decide for yourself.
Oh, that commercial is so good. So good. Well done, Andrea. Look for yourself,
gets me.
guys. What is Scientology? Scientology is disconnection. And
Mhm.
that is what we're talking about this evening with my very special guests, Gabrielle from Escaping the Cultverse A, and Dylan Gill, who you guys all know from Blow Drill, which is probably one of the most awesome names for a channel, I think.
Thank you.
Welcome, guys. How's it going tonight?
Good.
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, for sure. And if I know you guys are both working on getting some watch hours. So if anyone in the chat here and the replay crew wants to pop over to their channel and make sure to watch on theirs channel to help them out, that would be amazing. You guys want to say hi to a few people in the chat before we get started?
Sure.
All right.
Heck yeah.
So we got a very, very long-term viewer of mine, Pause for Andrea over in Alberta. We got a new member,
Hi,
Kayla
Pause.
B. Thank you very much for becoming a member. And if you guys do want to come up
Go,
and be a member,
Kayla.
yeah, Kayla. Both Gabrielle and I both know Kayla. And in fact, Kayla and I went to the same school together.
Oh, I was
Uh,
wondering
we
if
What is
got
that's
that all about?
A boot,
boot.
yeah. All
One.
right, Dylan, you cannot make fun of the Canadians when you're surrounded by Canadians, okay?
Eh?
No, I'm embracing it. That's it.
Are you from California, Dylan?
That is correct.
FNA, bro. FNA.
That's right,
Uh,
man. Yeah.
Hello to my lovely wife, who is probably, she's on the bus right now, heading home from work. We got Lisa Marie saying hello to Dylan.
Oh.
Dylan, another Dylan, apparently, but that's okay. That's okay.
It's okay. I'll still wave and say hello.
It sounds the same. Quirkalopagus, which is kind of a fun name too.
I love that name. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
We
cool.
got Born Ancient,
Ancient.
also a long-term supporter of SPTV or anti-Scientology television. Violet, hello.
Hi,
I am
Violet.
Eileen. Hello.
Born a
Oh, it dawned on me
Carlton.
is here.
Damn. there's
Awesome. A lot of really cool, fun people. And we got, of course, Laura
Look at
FM.
that.
Laura.
Hello.
The one, the only.
The one and only, the most energetic person in the space, I'd say. And we have, of course, Lorna. And
Hello,
last but not
Lorna.
least, Acupunk. Hello. Yeah, this is awesome, guys. I was looking forward to this chat, sort of, kind of, but not really. We're going to be covering,
Right.
yeah, it's like, this is going to be great, except it's not. We're going to be discussing Disconnection, which, in my opinion, is one of the worst aspects to Scientology, the most destructive for sure. And yeah, let's just get started off. Gabe,
Yeah.
what sparked this off?
Dylan.
Dylan?
I didn't do it.
Yes. And I texted him and I said, here's the topic: disconnection and resilience. And he said, oh, how family is reduced to a consideration of survival rather than an expression of trust. And I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be interesting. So
you just doxed me. No, well, yeah, no, that it's interesting. Yeah, this will definitely be an interesting conversation for sure.
So there's a bit of Scientologies in that that wording, I think.
Mhm.
Correct, Dylan? the word consideration. Are you mean that in the consideration like the Scientology way or the more normal way?
Well, what you mean by a consideration is something that would like stop you or pause you from your total freedom or you going up the bridge.
Yeah.
What I meant is our parents kind of never took consideration, like they never thought of us as being young humans developing. They thought of us as being in need of Dianetic auditing and finding out where our file clerk is and using, like those kind of things. And so we never really got taken into consideration and acknowledged for where we were at, which is odd because when you look at a lot of the core concepts, it seems to promote that, right? It seems to promote those values, but at the same time, they're in hindsight, they're missing. They're devoid of any consideration for young humans.
Very much.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being a kid. I don't have a lot of memories as like pre like 10, 12-year-old or 10 or 12-year-old, but one of the ones I have is being in a supermarket freaking out on my mom because she wouldn't buy me some cereal I wanted. And it was definitely a bad for me cereal. And I was a absolute hellion, like you would not believe, right? I could scream, I could throw the tantrum like you wouldn't believe. And all she would say to me, she'd ignore me and just tell me to stop dramatizing and
Right.
so forth, right? I'm in
Right.
the middle of a friggin' supermarket and she's telling me to stop, stop being banky, stop dramatizing while I'm just like freaking out.
It was
But
like the punishment was more like quit dramatizing. And
Yeah.
you're like, what? Or come to present time.
Yep.
Ooh.
Like,
Now
what?
I'm going to read something from actually,
now,
I'm going to read something from
Sorry.
L. Ron Hubbard here regarding this because I just came across this earlier. He's talking about how to handle children when they're down tone. He's talking about, or if the child is in anger tone, let him be angry. Even if you are the victim, let him act out his anger, and usually it disappears quickly. But and he goes about trying to suppress it and so forth. But he just says, just let them do it. Don't try and handle the problem. Just let them scream on the floor. And that's exactly what my mom was doing, right?
Right.
So, it's brutal.
Or like when you learn about as a public, like learning about ethics or morals. I remember being taught the overt motivator sequence. And
Yeah.
in the book, but in the book it's taught or LRH talks about it in this family setting of like, okay, you're not supposed to get cookies in the cookie jar. Right. And then of course the kid got cookies because look how he's acting. He's like reacting. So obviously he has an overt. So what's your overt? And then it's like you have to pull that withhold. Right. And then so it's the cookie jar thing. Did you take cookies? And you can't admit to taking cookies. And then you get caught and you have to like time, place, form, and event. And that's how you learn about. So you this is something, it's very interesting that this comes up is being an ex and leaving the Sea Org and even the prior indoctrination as like a kid of a staff and everything. Ethics were always so heavy. It was never just like, hey, stop doing that and don't do it again. Okay.
Yeah.
It was now you have to decide where you are, who you are, what group do you want to have allegiance to? Then you have to make up the damage above and beyond.
Yeah.
And then you only can get back in the group if everybody lets you.
Yeah.
It's always conditional.
It's like, so it's this huge, too gruesome to confront. Where in the real world, you atone, you say, I'm sorry, period.
Yeah.
And then you
it's
pivot.
done.
Right.
Yeah.
You pivot and you don't repeat those actions.
Yeah.
And that's, it's hard though to, like, when I feel anxiety in my work, if like somebody's like, oh, the delivery's not going to be for like 3 more weeks. And then I have to go to the homeowner and be like, oh my God, like, don't fire me from this job. I'm really sorry, but they called and said the door isn't coming.
Yeah.
Like,
You think the worst, right? You go, yeah.
And it still is that way. It's really, I guess recognizing the triggers is part of resiliency and seeing where, even if you catch it mid trigger or catch it when you're feeling that anxiety and you're feeling small and you're making yourself small, you can then start to acknowledge it and see it and understand it for what it is. And,
Mhm.
you know, and try to overcome that, I guess. Knowing it will pass, right? Isn't that part of resiliency?
Yeah. Actually, did you know that there are stages of resiliency? I
What?
didn't know.
Stage.
It's actually there's a whole psychological sort of makeup of it. And it's I had no idea, but there's and it has to do, I found it was a guy named Dr. Ginsburg. He's a pediatrician. He just happens to, talk about, I just found this on the whole thing about kids. He's a child pediatrician. And it's resiliency is all part of human development. It's it's
Right.
it's components of it, right? It's being competent, confident, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. So it's all these things that make up being resilient, which you never learn as a child when you're in Scientology. And I know this because I've had 3 nephews who were raised in Scientology, and I observed all this, and they were never able to sort of be kids. They were always having to be adults. They were cooking for each other. They were taking each other to school. Like,
Right.
one of them went to school with Jeff, and it was, the parents were always stressed out because they weren't in the Sea Org, but they were on staff. And
Right.
they could never, and when they would get in trouble, it was so harsh. It was just like such extreme. And I experienced that as a young adult in the church as well. It was always, lower condition, you're not my friend anymore. Like
Right.
literally he would
Yep.
walk past you in the hall and not look at you.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Right.
were like
Absolutely.
ostracized until you got out of your liability condition, and you were always in fear of getting into trouble. So I can't imagine what it would have been like for a child to be not only raised that way in the household, but to also be treated like that when you're in the org as well.
Yeah.
It's
Now let's
it's so destructive.
absolutely. Let's backpedal just a little bit because we're going into a little bit of Scientologies here for people.
We
Just
did.
want to clarify the lower conditions of existence or the ethics conditions. When
Yeah.
we're talking about this is below non-existence. Basically, if you do something really wrong against the mores of the group, you get put into a lower condition. And liability condition is the main one that people tend to be in. And you literally have to go through steps to compare what group you're deciding between, and then make up the damage to that group, right? And if you are labeled this, being in a lower condition is like a scarlet letter. Like people don't talk to you, you're not trusted. That's probably the biggest thing that I found. Like
Yeah.
you could be telling the truthiest truth you could ever be true about, um,
Sorry.
and it doesn't matter because if
Yeah.
you're in liability or lower, or I guess lower than non-existence, it doesn't matter. You're not trusted, and it's palpable how people react to you when you're in that condition. And for someone like me who was constantly skirting the rules of the organization, wasn't I, Gabe? Um,
Yes.
I was always kind of in one of those conditions, right? And
Right.
Me too.
even though I was producing like crazy, right? Like I was a
Mhm.
really good bookseller and I was working hard and I always showed up on time, and you know, um, it doesn't matter. You're just not trusted. So to be a kid like that is quite damaging, and it definitely affects you later on in life.
Yeah, I started selling Dynetics books when I was like 10, door to door.
Show off.
Yeah. Yeah, killed
And
it.
when did you read Dynetics?
Because I read
Sorry.
Dynetics in the Sea Org. It was because of the concept early on of exchange and being out
Oh my
exchange.
God.
Yeah.
And that's a big way that kids are used and as pawns, in Sea Org and Scientology environments, is all about exchange. My
Oh my
father
God.
flat up told me, he bought me a early course on, when I was young enough or old, yeah, when I was old enough to do it, called the Hubbard Apprentice Scientologist. It's called like the HAS course. It was like a big course. It was like a pre-auditor course, like an adult, before
Oh
they
yeah.
came out with the basics kind of. So he bought me that course as like one of my first actions that I could do, or like first courses I could do. My aunt was the course supervisor. So, and my uncle was on staff there too. So, then the next, when I finished that course, it was great. I twinned with my father. It was pretty cool actually for a
Family
kid.
time.
Cause right, exactly. Cause, normally I just get left at the org to twin with anybody. So it was cool to do a course with my dad. And I remember completing the course, writing my success story. And then my dad looking at me and saying, all right, I bought you the first course. Now you have to get your exchange in. And you have to take another course. And it's like, wait a sec, what?
Yeah.
So being a kid, like I can't do that at all, at all ever. So it was weird.
Horrible.
Those weren't
Sorry.
really healthy. And also with, you said with the condition, liability was also, that was kind of made to be too gruesome to confront.
Mm-hmm.
If you could be assigned non-existence, you could be assigned emergency and danger, which in the Sea Org was very common to be assigned emergency, bypass your normal routines and habits, do produce, present it, like these kind of things. And you have to write all that up and do it. And liability was one of those things that was like, if you got assigned liability or enemy or treason or confusion, it was a big deal, because coming out of that was, it was almost like going to the RPF, but a super light little backhand, like get back in control right now. Yeah, that's how I grew up, like with stat graphs. As a kid, I'd get yelled, my dad'd be like, Dylan, get over here. And I'd be like, what? He's like, that's a flunk on the lawn. Like, what?
Wow. Yeah.
That's a flunk on the lawn.
I'm trying to remember if I was ever told that I flunked on the lawn.
Dishes, I get flunked on dishes, flunked on the lawn, flunked on washing the car.
Dylan, that whole concept of exchange and children. I was speaking to my middle nephew not that long ago, and he went through a breakup. And one of the things, he was supposed to get married, they were engaged. One of the things he said to me, he was like, I think part of the problem was I was kind of out exchange. And this is my nephew, who he was hardly in Scientology, like actually doing any courses or anything like that. But he was raised in a household of two parents who were Scientologists. And
Right.
he's 40 something years old, and he still has that concept in his head of being out exchange and blaming himself for
Who's
that. Yeah. And, this guy, he's like 6'4", 300 and something pounds. He's a big guy.
He's a big dude.
And to hear that come out of his mouth, I was just like, I cried. It was just like, you're not out exchange. He's such a beautiful being, right? But he was like, even to this day, and he hardly had any contact with Scientology other than his crazy fucking parents.
I think that shows how the neural pathways aren't allowed to develop through like attachment styles and developmental stages. With Scientology, they're just carved. They're just carved out as deep as they can, and they just keep coming back and cutting them and deepening those wounds as much as they can. And from the earliest age possible, barley formula to, all that, it's just, that's the indoctrination, your parents, the birth, the weddings, all my family got married in Scientology weddings. All my, it's that whole, right. So, it's that whole, and then it becomes so normalized.
Yes.
Right before we came on, I was looking over at that Pearl Snappy and the Austin org, and they're having graduation tonight. And while she was filming, like probably 4 or 5 people with kids came in you know, and I was like, I remember being that kid. Like I totally
Yeah.
remember being that kid running around the org, like trying to, you know, maybe like peeking in the LRH office and like, you know, like doing all the junk and being just kind of a little, you know, just a kid and
Yeah.
getting, you know, like, hey, get snap two. We got to go. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird to see.
On
Sure.
the surface, when I would see kids in the org, because I spent a lot of time there, obviously, um, it really, really bothered me to see that they were out of control. Like the majority of them were out of control because the parents were too busy doing something. They were either
Me,
on
it's the
staff.
me. Right. They're
Yeah,
selfish.
it's like who
Right.
the hell wouldn't misbehave when you don't have any hardly any attention, and then when you do have attention, it's usually you're reprimanded or you're told to like get in present time or quit dramatizing or knock off the bank,
Right.
all that like I heard it all the time, and it's one of the reasons why I never had kids. I
Yeah.
could not bring myself to having kids because I knew. I mean, I had somewhat of a sort of normal upbringing, aside from
Mm.
an abusive father. Um, and but I could see what these kids were going through, and it was horrible. Anyways, that's my spiel on that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember running around the halls of the Vancouver org.
Hmm.
Like I used to, my mom was the flag banking officer who was in charge of basically all the treasury stuff there. And she was there all the time. My dad was the ED of CCHR, which is the front group for anti-psychiatry and so forth. And they were both on staff and at the same time. And I just, that's just where I was. I was too
Right.
young to be by
Right.
myself. And that's where I grew up, running around these halls of a
Exactly.
100-year-old building and getting in
Getting
trouble,
called to
going
do
on the
twins
toilet.
or do some word clearing or do some co-audit or right. And just being, you don't even realize you're willfully subjecting yourself to this pseudoscience brainwashing just over and
Hmm.
over, just carving
Yeah,
out those pathways, just reinforcing them all. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
it's,
And having it happen at such a formative stage is so damaging. And I
right.
still recognize effects to it to this day as I'm kind of dealing with stuff
Same.
in my
Yeah.
personal life and how I think and everything. It's so insidious.
I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
something that like, having lived it and then, I've thought of like kind of if I could ever give it away, I'd want to give all of it away.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'd have to give a lot of me away. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then what I would never want somebody else to pick up or get any of that.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't, that's something that and I think that's a lot of it when you've experienced trauma is it's like, it's okay for it to happen to me,
Mm.
but I wouldn't want it to happen to you. And I wouldn't want it to happen to you.
Yeah.
And I would protect you guys with my life, but I don't matter as much. And that's, I think that is part of the aftermath of the trauma that we live with, and not just us.
Yeah.
I think a lot of trauma survive, and that's why this is such an amazing community. Is a lot of people can relate to that very personalized trauma, because
Mm-hmm.
that healing journey is very personal too. Unfortunately, I wish we could all just heal, get together and like hold each other and heal, and
Yeah.
that is therapeutic, but really the ultimate change means that we have to start accepting ourselves and start um being that person without maybe being acknowledged,
Yeah.
and for me that was like when I had kids, I didn't want to have kids either. i
Yeah.
i was um I was really terrified that they'd come to me and be like, what the hell were you thinking? why would you
Yeah.
have me?
Exactly.
And I'm just like, sorry, I was
Can
trying to
I
break the chains, you know.
can I bring that up a little bit too?
Yeah, for sure.
Just because this is relevant. Acupunk says in the chat here, I remember thinking that bringing children
Mm,
into this world was child abuse. And I was thinking to
100.
myself,
Yeah.
yeah, just like in what it says in KSW1, where having kids nowadays is a bit
Mm,
like dropping them into a lion's cage or a tiger's cage or
right.
something like that. They're talking about the world being so bad, and I it never really dawned on me that reference kind of like had part of the reason why I never really wanted to have kids, because
Right.
it creates a dangerous environment in your mind to the world. So you think, why would I bring children into this world, right? I mean, I
Right.
don't want kids for other reasons, but that's a really good thing. I never really thought about that before. I just sort of cognited on that to use Scientology.
Well, one thing I will say about having kids is I probably I wouldn't have challenged myself to heal as much in the last 15 years. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have realized how selfish and how many things I still held on to from me,
Mm,
and how that stopped me from being the person I need to be for other people. And that I would pour out of myself so much and leave myself depleted and still keep trying to pour and give, here's my vessel, here's everything, take it. and
Yeah.
and realizing that all I'm doing is hurting everyone. And having kids is, it forces you to be the parent you never had, or you have to break, or you continue that chain, right? So
Yeah.
you have to break those chains.
yeah.
And it's hard to know, like, to freely give of yourself when your parents never did that. I was terrified when I first had kids. I was like, how do I love, and how do I be compassionate? I'm
Mm.
terrified. I don't know how to do it.
Isn't that so messed
Great.
up though, that you as an adult person you don't know how to love, you don't know how to feel? Like for the longest time, I actually thought that I was just a psychopath, because
Right. Right.
I would
Yeah, no,
I would
absolutely.
honestly be in this
I get
situation
that.
where someone is like having a really emotional time, like a breakup with a friend or something, and they they're looking for emotional support from me, and I'm hugging them, and I'm just like, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All I can think of is get your TRs in.
Right.
Stop
Right.
dramatizing, and
Mhm.
like I'm thinking of all these things, but I should have just been emoting, which I never could. And I honestly,
Right.
like, I would watch like documentaries and stuff on psychopaths and sociopaths, trying to figure myself out, because I
Right.
never really knew, that I just didn't know how to express my emotions. And that's something that I've been working on for last year, basically, is really trying to know what an emotion is for me and what's an
Right.
appropriate emotion. It's nutty to think of as a 40-year-old, 42-year-old soon, that I'm thinking of these things, right?
It isn't, Jeff. That's healthy.
It's not.
That's
Oh, I know it's
a
healthy
big
now,
healthy reach.
but I
It
should
is.
know these things,
For
right?
sure.
Like this, I should know
No, you
this.
shouldn't. That's the thing. And that's what
Yeah.
I need. I tell myself the same thing I'm telling you, because I try to tell myself that, or I want somebody to, but it's not nutty. Like, we don't know
No.
what we don't know until we don't know it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I
And-
have that. I'm like 57 years old, and I'm like,
Right.
what the hell? I should have my shit together already. I should have had a career.
Right.
I
I
shoulda,
still think
shoulda-
man's basically good, And that's the other thing about resiliency is, right, it's humor and trying to stay
Exactly.
positive. So, like,
It is.
but it is, I do hear you, Jeff.
Yeah.
I have those same
Yeah.
moments, and I really wanted to attach real feelings behind that. When I am with somebody and they're like going through what happened to them, I want to be there and actively hold space with that person, and like have that connection that we never were able to develop through attachment styles, through how we were treated as children.
Mhm.
And it's not even like, I even go back, what do you guys think about this, the idea of like being a victim and like going back into your memories and getting stuck there, or being at a place as you grow to relook at things and be like, oh my gosh, I never realized this is what I normalized.
Mhm.
Like it's a hard, and with growing up in Scientology, you're taught that you don't do that. You don't ever be victim is right next to body death on the tone scale.
Exactly.
So you
Very
don't do
bad.
that. So yeah, what do you guys think about that? Like, about going back? Because I have a hard time with that sometimes, reliving my or even telling my story, because I feel like I'm like being a pity party, or I'm trying to
know.
trauma dump, or like those weird watchwords that really are thought stopping sometimes, for at least for me. What do you guys think?
Yes, I experienced the same thing. It's really hard to talk about my own issues or woes.
Hmm.
I'd rather explain to people how I thought about things, not how I felt about it.
Hmm. Right.
It's
And do you think
you
that's
open.
programming, or do you
Mm,
think how, because that is a big premise in Scientology, right? Is not, and you don't talk about your case ever. You don't
No.
talk
no,
about,
oh yeah,
like, so that's,
that's
there's a
hard.
lot of being vulnerable isn't something that is a Scientology concept.
Oh yeah,
No.
And that's
that's
Not at all.
paramount
absolutely
to
spot
healing,
on.
right?
No.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's my big hiccup sometimes too, is, like, I'll hide depression, I'll hide those things because I don't want to feel like I'm being, an attention whore, or I'm being, you know, um,
yeah.
a ton of Scientology words. I'm trying to think. It's weird when you have to think of the actual word, and I can think of like 10 Scientology ways
Yeah.
to do
It's
I
so
know
much
that
easier.
feeling.
that.
Well, for me, like, I find it, I suffer, probably with bipolar too, is I think what we've discovered. But I get I get into a stage of mania where I'm just unbelievably happy, like, or it
Hmm.
seems like it, and active and stuff. And then I know a few days later I'm just gonna crash completely. It's like
That's called
it's like
roller coaster.
oh yeah, I'm PTS.
Right.
Dang
Peaks
it.
and valleys, Jeff. Peaks and
Yeah,
valleys.
peaks and valleys. But it'll be like it's very pronounced, and then it'll
Mhm.
be like someone
Right.
just drains the bathtub and I'm just completely empty. And it happened
Oh,
last
Mm,
week where I literally spent
right.
2 days. I did nothing other than walk the dog and sit on the couch because I couldn't. I wanted
Right.
to, right? Like I
mhm.
had
Mm,
the desire to do it and the weather was okay, but I just couldn't leave the house except for like
same.
the most important things, like the dog, and whatever, right?
Yeah,
But it's it's completely debilitating, and being able to I'm better at it now, but being able to reach out in those moments and tell someone that's where you're at. It's usually my wife that I tell.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Um, but
I
I
don't do
definitely
that.
have friends who have this issue as well. One of
Right.
them lives farther away from me, and I need to remember to check in with him because I know that he gets to those points really often, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and it's all well and good to say that you will reach out to someone if you need help, but it's not always possible. So it's I guess the point being,
yeah,
if you know someone like that, reach out because you never know
Yeah,
if they might need
definitely.
help.
They'll be
But I
really glad
experienced
you
this a
called,
lot.
for sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it
It's this. It's the suffering. It's all the mental health issues as a result of growing up in a crazy fucking cult that destroys lives. It makes me so angry. I get so angry about this kind of stuff, how much people have suffered as a result. And you're just one person. There's so many others that are like this. This is why it's so important for us to speak out and talk about this kind of stuff, because who knows how many more people are experiencing what you're going through, Jeff.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's
lots of
really,
people.
really important. Yeah, exactly. It's
like
like we need
all
to
the
talk
time.
But
about
Yeah.
it.
but you seem so good, Dylan. You seem like you're solid and everything's perfect. What's going on? Like
Right.
Yeah.
I'm saying that
I'm
very like
PTS. No, I know.
facetiously,
Right.
I hear you.
right? But like
Right. And
we
I am, because I feel like that's what my job is, and that's my role. Is
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be there for other people. I want to be there when I see people where in places that I've been,
Hmm.
and I can see, and it's palatable, that emotion. When you open yourself up to emotion, it's crazy. It's
Hmm.
crazy the feelings that if you allow yourself to be almost filterless, you feel it's a lot. It's a lot of emotion. And um I think being there for people when you can pinpoint that, the only thing I wanted when I was at that same place was somebody to just be there and listen and
Yeah.
give me a hug or whatever, and just be that, and then be like, hey, you want to go grab a burger or something, play some pool or darts, or yeah, and just be that calming, that, you know, that giving you grace in a way that doesn't have to center them. And so that's the person I try to be, and it's hard to be vulnerable. That's hard to juggle, to be both,
Yeah.
I think. So you just figure where you are. If you can help everybody along the way, that's gonna that's part of our healing journey. That's part of being survivors, you know.
And
I don't
what
think this
makes
is
it
something we recover from, and that doesn't mean it's bad. I think it's
right.
something that we can recognize the triggers. I recognize that anxiety. I have it every day. I get up, I make my kids lunch, I drive them to school, and then at one point driving back to get ready to go to work, this wave of anxiety just is like, and I'm like, and there's days when I go to the house and it feels like I'm in a tornado.
Wow.
And I can't think, I want to do stuff, but I feel like you said, Jeff, it's only the most essential things. I'll just go and just sit, and not in a weird, I'll just sit
Mm-hmm.
and not hardly do, you know, and it's the weirdest, but if you, I don't know, I've learned to try to embrace it, and it seems to, you can catch it a little bit, and, you know, I don't know, I keep making it. So, and you know, I don't reach out. So, there's hope.
Well, this is a good comment on that note too. I think we all hide depression. Everyone has problems, and we don't want to burden others with what
Mm-hmm.
we should be able to handle on our own. I think that's a really important point. But if you're suffering from depression, at least in my experience, there's something you're not being able to handle on your own. You might need to ask for help, right?
Yeah.
But that's when it's the hardest to ask. So what do
Right.
you
I,
do?
and I
You know?
think that's where family and or friends, very close friends, really matter. Um and for me, I have a hard time actually trusting people since being in Scientology. There was like so much betrayal. I had what I thought were very close friends, and my family's pretty much gone, but just sort of comparing, like, I mean, if you were going through that and you were in it, still in the cult, you're fucked, like, literally, because you can't talk to anybody about this stuff. If you're like, I remember going through the depression. I remember wanting to drive my car into the when I'm going home on the highway, I wanted to drive my car into that concrete meridian. I could not tell anybody about that, you know but now, and this is the most frustrating part too, is when you get this when you experience the disconnection, you all you want to do is reach out to those family members. Like, that's what I
Right.
wanted to do with my sister, right? It's like, I'm going through this shitty time in my life right now. Who do you reach out to? Family, usually, or a really good friend. But you can't, because you're declared, you know so, and this is why, again, I keep going back to how destructive it is to every part of your life, and trying to sort of put the pieces back together again, and be resilient in your life, is a really tough order, and it's, for me, like you guys were saying, it's a struggle every day. Every day it's a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really good comment from Name in Northwest here. 30 years in, 20 years out, still have
Yeah.
some of the invasive thoughts from all the decades of coercive degradation, so much labeling. He's an SP, degraded being, antisocial, PTS,
Dev
which,
team merchant.
I'm taking that
Dev T
back.
merchant,
Dev T
not going
and
from A to B, aberrated.
yeah,
Right.
so many, so many. I'm taking PTS back, just for the record. I own that now.
Right.
I take pride in that. I'm a definite trouble source for them right now, but it's like,
Pretty terrific sapien.
there you go. Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a
Um,
good one.
Just thought of
I
that.
think that's important. I think it's important to reclaim definitions of words and own that, because it's not a bad thing to be PTS or NSP, because you're only a PTS or an SP to one specific group, which is Scientology. You know,
Right. That's
Yeah.
I
interesting.
figured I
Um,
figured that because I was always getting labeled PTS. I was always, and I could never put my finger on who's the SP until I actually got out. I figured out who the actual SP was, right? It's
Peter
the
Berg.
cult.
do
Peter
you
Berg.
guys remember? Do you remember when the potential trouble source suppressive person course came out? When the
The new one?
PTSSP course,
Yeah, which
pre
one?
Golden Age, I guess,
Yeah.
of
No.
tech.
It was a long time
The
ago.
one of the end phenomenon was to find the SP in your area, which I'm sure the new one was probably
Yeah.
similar.
Yep.
Well, my dad and uncle did it. I was too young at the time. It was just too. I hadn't done student hat, so I wasn't. It was too much of an advanced course for somebody like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
What was the student hat?
Yeah, I did the student hat at 11 and a half. That was hard.
That's
Jesus.
rough, buddy.
But they had to find the SP, and they found my great grandmother, who was born in 1911, as the suppressive person. And
Wow. For your family or?
yeah, for my family.
Entire
Yeah.
family. Wow.
Well, what's
That's
weird is my
pretty
dad was letting me live. Like, he would leave me with my great grandparents for months at a time. And my great grandfather was born in 1898, and my great grandmother was born in 1911. So they were super old when I was really young.
Yeah.
They did not deserve me, because I was not a good. I was really, I had a lot of energy when I was young. So these old, like, and my great grandfather was like 6'2", but yeah, that was, getting left there was definitely not on their cards. But they found her as the SP, so it's weird that they were leaving me with this SP.
That's
And
weird.
that it was really strange, and it was right pretty much around the time that I got yanked out to go to the Sea Org. So and my dad went up and did all that, but it was weird to think, when I got out, I was up above int, and then I got busted down to int to do my RPF, and RPF's RPF and all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
And then I blew from the int base. So when I blew, it's like an instant declare.
Yeah.
You're not ever allowed to come back.
So did you
So-
actually get instantly declared?
Well, I mean, it's not like they didn't catch me. I guess if they caught me, they would have. They didn't catch
Right.
me. So, but a couple months later, they sent me my SP declare. So yes,
Oh.
it was pretty brutal. It was definitely pretty. It definitely made it so that having gotten into the Sea Org at like 14, when I got out, I was right around 22, and the only people I'd ever known were like my father and like that kind of. So it was really
Yeah.
and my uncle didn't live. The only person that still lived in Northern California was my dad. And so I tried to, and he was teaching. Well, actually, he lived in Oregon at the time, and he was teaching at Delphi. So when I got out, it was instant disconnection. Your only terminal is the IJC. Make it right with the church. And of course, I couldn't go back. So that pretty much left
You
me to
knew.
just. Well, no, I knew because I ended up going to. I called up. It's really crazy. I called up a friend of mine that I had known. He was part of the reason why I got sent to the Sea Org, is he was into skateboarding. And so I skipped class at the mission. I was doing my upper indoctrination TRs, which are like control and body routing and a lot of these yelling at ashtrays and that kind of thing.
Trade control.
Right. And so I looked his name up in the phone book, and I called them, and his dad, I left a message on an answering machine, and I ended up taking a bus up there, and he showed up at the bus station, and
Oh, wow.
able to stay with them for a couple of weeks until one day the phone rang and the church was like, "You need to come back, Dylan." I was like, "What? How did you know?"
Holy
And
crap. Well, probably your life history, right? Or whatever. It was a friend.
no,
They
I think
know
it was my
everything.
father. I
Oh, your
think
father.
because I had called my dad,
Oh,
and he told me my only terminal was the IJC. So I'm pretty sure he wrote me up and ratted me out from the phone call, or from the phone I called from. So
yeah.
then, but at the time I did not put those two things together. So I got a phone call the same day that I got a letter from Scientology International with my declare in it. Like that was before they stopped before that was out PR. That was their big, like, just knockout blow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was like the reason why I even stayed in the RPF was because the severe reality adjustment and reality factor that I got was so unbelievably awful that I peed my pants when I was sent there, when I was probationally declared by Shelley Miscavige.
Wow.
And
That's
it was
nuts.
like I wasn't allowed to be put on a routing form. I wasn't, so it was hard. Like leaving was a really hard thing, to
So,
do.
sorry, I'm
Yeah.
interested in that. Was that conditionally or probationally declared? Like you were like
Never
pre-declared
heard of that.
before you got declared? I've never heard of that before. Is that a Sea
Oh
Org thing?
yeah, no, absolutely. And it was pretty, I think at the Imp base, it was, so I was up at the Church of Spiritual Technology,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is above like RTC and pretty much the whole Imp base.
The
So
secret.
I
we
had
didn't
never
really,
even heard of that
Yeah.
when I was in. I never heard of that
but you
CST.
had probably heard of LRH Archives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly.
you're
Okay.
not told about CST at all. In fact, the first time I heard about it was an old interview with you years ago on YouTube. Yeah, you're still famous, bro.
I know. I thought I did this like 5 years ago, and I was like, "That's it. I'm done."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a lot of people that it's almost like the precursor to the whole.
Oh,
Is you were put on like double secret probation, basically, and you were made to do, like, you were stuck out at the Ant Ranch, in the house, and you had to like hang out there and get sec checked every day and do mess work and do all this crap. And then you would, after a few months of that, you were either put under Shelly to expedite and do like be her errand boy, basically, or person, or you were put on the RPF. And then some people were sent down to PAC to go to the RPF, which
That's
meant
weird.
you were like toast.
Yeah.
Like that was
that
so.
was
And then
horrible.
the problem for me was I couldn't be around anybody because of where I was. So they had to keep me isolated from like
Yeah.
almost pretty much everybody.
I had a question for you there,
And
Dylan,
yeah,
in
yeah,
regards
sure.
to that. So you
Mhm.
couldn't be kept around people because of the sensitive nature of the base, correct?
Super secret.
Like how secret
Yes.
it is and stuff.
Mhm.
Now,
Right.
so they announced the program that they're putting on gold plates and what have you, but what is so like why is it so secret? I don't get it because they announced what they're doing. Is there anything else they're doing there that is not announced?
Well, kinda, but not. I mean, it's all part of it. It's so the basic idea of CST is to preserve the technology of LRH and all the works of LRH for all time.
Yeah.
As long as like the goal on everything that we put into the vaults were to be as the most current technology for the longest preservation time. If we had to make new paper, if we had to make new procedures and new machines, then we did it.
Right.
Like it
Wow.
wasn't, there was, and you know, LRH has always kind of had a little, through the time when like David Miscavige took over, LRH had been collecting like gems for quite a long time.
Oh.
And it was just part of like Sea, I don't know if it was Sea Org Reserves at the time, but that's how I knew most of the money flow as. But So those, and then those of course would have to be accounted for. And a lot of those assets were kept at like Author Services International. So a lot of those assets, like, so the horse ranch at Creston, that was gifted to CST, right around the time that they're getting their tax exempt status. So subsequently, a lot of those assets would be transferred to underground storage facilities and whatnot, and then maintained. So other than that, it's,
I guess I
there
just find
was,
that the secrecy is so weird to me, like now on the outside, but it's like double super duper top secret in Scientology, right? Like it's really big
right.
deal, security clearances and stuff. But what's the big deal? I guess I just don't get it. It's
There
not
were
like it's secret
basically
technology.
3 people at the int base that dealt with CST, and that was Angie Blankenship, Kurt Whelan, and Michael Render. And they had the basic knowledge, and Shelley, obviously, besides Shelley and David,
Yeah, of course.
who were on the lines. Like, I merked back and forth with DM weekly, daily, for weekly. I sent my weekly reports directly to him on all the progress. So I had to deal with that chaotic behavior a little bit. But luckily I didn't have to deal with them in person. So it was kind
I
of cool.
can't imagine what your weekly reports would look like. I know what mine looked like because I had to do weekly reports from all sorts of hats. I can't imagine what yours would be like. Oh
I
my
had
God.
to do, my weekly reports consisted of every the progression from one Thursday to the next of every project that was going on at every base in CST.
Wow.
So Trementina, Petrola, Lake Arrowhead, and then any future projects.
What was your post again?
I was the estate secretary for CST. Okay. So I was in charge of all the building, motor pool, estates, pretty much everything estates.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get back on a topic a little bit here, talking about disconnection.
Yeah, no kidding.
I know we
try to stay positive.
I know we should.
It's fascinating, though.
I got lots of
really
questions.
Fascinating because
no, absolutely. I'm down to. I don't have any. I see. Is it KG11? Is that what it is? Say it's KG.
I was gonna. I have those starred. Do you want to take those up right now?
Oh, however, yeah. I don't know.
We got 2 questions here. For you, Hugs, Dylan. What year? Aww. How old were you? I guess when you left the Sea Org or when you joined the Sea Org?
I think I've kind of covered that.
Yeah, for sure.
Since we've been.
We're
14, 22.
Correct. And 22, so 7 years. What years were those? I don't know how old you are now.
Yeah, I got out in like 91-ish.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. When I ended up doing a lot of stuff afterwards. So.
Yeah. And then next question, Dylan, you've talked about blowing after your wife at the time wrote the care on you. What happened at CST to get you to INT? It sounded like you enjoyed your time at CST.
Well, I think what you're referring to is prior, and this, I've tried to explain this to quite a few people. I was on those lines. Like, so my position, you got to look at Scientology like 2 lines. There's like the delivery and estates, and then there's this line that just like observes this and watches this, every aspect of it. So up above, like up here is where like Mike Rinder and Claire and all those RTC INT people, and then there was people at like a middle management, like CMO continental units, and then there was like a continental liaison office that those units watched, and then like Clearwater had its own little Commodore's Messenger unit that was a observation and execution arm for Watchdog Committee and CMO International. And so my entire Sea Org career, I was on those lines, and I was doing missions, and it was pretty chaotic. It was pretty crazy. It was pretty, like, at the time we were trying to get the flag service org up to $1 million a week in gross income. And so there was a lot of pressure from INT management on us to find and debug and get everything going so we could weekly make $1 million. And then when I went up to the International Extension Unit in Los Angeles, it was the same. It was dealing with all the external facing groups. Like, I'm just going to give you the names and we'll do the abbreviations later. Like WISE, ABLE, CCHR, Way to Happiness,
The
you
front
know,
groups.
all the front groups, basically.
Yeah.
And establishing those and moving them. At that time, we were doing the Hollywood Guarantee building and looking to put all those into the Hollywood Guarantee, but they were actually downtown LA at the time. So we were doing all these missions from PAC to downtown LA into these management groups and, you know, running them basically through the Sea Org. And so at the same time, I was getting my clearances for the CST. And once I got my clearances, like, I disappeared. Like, next day gone. In the middle of the night, we drove up. And I woke up to like 30-foot, 40-foot tall pine trees and squirrels all over. It's funny because the main base of CST is used to be the old Squirrel Inn. So it's kind of funny. It's on Squirrel Inn Road. I know, it's hilarious,
funny.
right?
Oh my
So,
God.
Perfect.
but yeah, so that's I think the idea was it all kind of cleared up. Like, you know, my whole purpose, my whole life was, I knew my urges towards existence for survival were consisting of 8 dynamics. And for me to be a good human, all those dynamics needed to be in cohesion and be working. And so all through the Sea Org, it was just cope and like no case on post and you just make it go right. That is the way, you know, and you just did it, you know. Purpose is senior.
That's
And when I
right.
got up there, I was back on, like, I felt like I was on purpose again. I felt like we could actually maybe make the world a better place, you know, and that was the calming effect of like leaving these management lines of this crazy chaoticness to this, we're just preserving all of his written words forever, which now I feel absolutely terrible about. But at the time it felt really cleansing. It felt like I was back like on purpose. So
That's interesting.
I can
I've been trying
totally understand that.
Yeah.
I actually
Right.
wanted to go up to INT. I was trying to get, I actually was going to join the Sea Org in LA. I was down there for a year and a half training, and it looked very appealing. Some parts of it, but
Well, they make it look like that, and it's you know, it's basically Les Dane's book Big League Sales. You know, and it never ends. It's find your ruin, you know, and your ruin is helping, you know. Wouldn't if there was a technology, wouldn't you want to see everybody be able to apply that? Wouldn't you want everybody to have it? If it could help save even one life, just one.
exactly. Yeah.
Wouldn't you want that technology to be disseminated around? Right. Now
That's
you're
what
all
keeps
saying
me
yes. And then
going.
I'm like, hey, so you need to sign $1 billion in your contract.
Yeah,
But
what are
you
you
just
gonna
said you
say,
wanted to
no?
help the world. Like you,
Yeah.
so it's that's, and it never stops in once you're in the Sea Org, it's pretty much, you are a commodity. You're a number, you know, you go
similar.
where you're told and you do what you're told.
It's similar in a class 5 org. You know, there's tons of musical chairs.
Right.
You know, it happens, and you know, everybody's trying to build up their own division and do whatever they can. You know, it's funny, that reminds me of when the senior CS came back. She's a class 8. Her name's Shelley Hockett, and she came back with mission orders, and it was to basically man up the technical division with all these auditors, 20 auditors. It was a past program that
Was it
Miscavige.
TTC?
Yeah,
Is that what it was?
it was the golden age of Tech 1 program that never happened.
Right, like the
I was
TTC never happened either, or the Universe Core, or
Exactly.
it's like failed after failure. Let's just name it something different. We'll do this.
They
That's what
won't
they're
even
doing right
notice.
now,
It'll be fine.
right?
rebrand it, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Scientology is amazing for rebranding shit, right? But
Right.
you know, I mean, this woman came back, and she was like the first golden age of tech senior CS. So she was a big deal. And
Right. Right.
and she just came back with so much purpose. And this woman was really, really driven. And she just bowled everybody out of the way and pretty much took over the org, if you ask me,
Right.
from a
It's
senior CS post.
tone 40 command intention. Of course she did.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
And she directly reported, she directly reported to RTC. She had a straight
right.
line. And I was just like, I don't understand that. It's like, what happened to, lines and terminals? What happened to, the
Right.
org
Command
board?
chain. Oh my God. The
It was out
RTC
the
reps
window.
were the beginning of the end. Like on it. Like
Oh, yeah.
CMO was already in, it was almost like Department of Redundancy Department. You know, it was like, let's just keep and just so and that shows his fear and anxiety. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what a lot of, that whole movement right now is being run by fear.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
not just fear, but like terror. And
Oh, yeah.
it's, feeling, it's hard, knowing that you only are a slave to the technology, like to the written word, and
Mhm.
knowing that it actually doesn't work. That's a hard, even inside, like those are the things that I think a lot of the people that grew up in it were able to leave, because it's just like you could find, for everything you found that was one thing, you could find something contrary that he said. And so it became this big like word salad, and it
Yeah.
became this like neural linguistic programming rather than a true technology to like save people. There's some few things like gems picked out, but those are attributed or attributable to other sources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
the
But
that's
it's
problem,
that smidge
the
of
problem with
truth,
that,
right? It's the
exactly
smidge of truth that keeps you going.
right.
and the
This-
problem with
well,
those little workable things is that's what gets a lot of people in the first
Right.
place.
Mhm.
The Fundamentals of Thought, for example, is a great book for new people, and I think there isn't necessary. It's not all lies. It's not also not all LRH, right? And
Right,
in
Problems of work
fact,
too.
sorry.
Problems of work.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah, problems,
there's
right.
nothing wrong with these basic books, in general, except for the stuff that is damaging. But it's how they're used to get people in that is the damaging part for
Well,
sure.
they're taking a basic like piece of ancient knowledge,
Mhm.
and they're perverting it for their own, and that's pretty present when you start to dissect the basic concepts of Scientology. It's definitely interwoven. It makes it more maniacal or premeditated than
Mhm.
hit, like where can you show me that he really ever really wanted to help?
Right.
He just wanted to get like the Dianetics was more like to prove the psychological society wrong. Like,
Yeah.
how dare you? The
It's
it's like,
motivation.
and
Yeah.
right, in England, and like, how dare you laugh at me for my pseudoscience that you guys gave up on like 30 years ago? I mean, that's really all he did was pick up pseudoscience and bring it back. Like psychoanalysis and basic stuff like that. And so it's after that, it's all about just control, and it's about manipulation, and it's about brainwashing, and then you look at his history and you're like, wow, he basically learned all those things. Like, okay, it makes sense.
It's truly
It doesn't,
amazing though.
right. I give the only credit I give L. Ron Hubbard is to the his ability to compile what he compiled at that time in
Yeah.
our history, because
Yes.
that's actually quite amazing to be able to find all those little pieces of truth and plagiarize them one by one and turn them into a religion.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah, nothing. Like, he ruined three generations of my family and counting. So
Yeah.
not
It's
cool.
disgusting.
Right.
There's a few comments I starred. Did you guys want to take those up?
Let's
sure.
do it.
Cool. So first one's actually from my wife. And this is an interesting thing. So your life is likely to have multiple. So this is in reference to lower conditions and
Mhm.
basically being not allowed to talk to people. or them not talking to you. So your life is likely to have multiple mini disconnections, even if you don't experience disconnection in the handle or disconnect sense.
Right.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I never thought about it that way. What do you guys think?
Yeah, she's right. I mean, every time you do a liability, you know, they disconnect from you. You're looked at as some evil person, and
Mhm.
then you're back in the fold again. I mean, that's probably the biggest difference, though, is like you do tend to you do get allowed back into the group.
But in order to be in the group, you have to make amends by, like, if you're a public, you have to buy more intensives, which is more
Mhm.
auditing, or you have to buy a pallet of way to happinesses that then they can go say that they gave away.
My husband
But
had to
like,
do
and
that.
that's the funny thing about science. Like, even their philanthropy
Yeah,
is somebody paid for that. Every way to
for
happiness booklet that has ever been handed out was paid for by a Scientologist.
Yep.
They don't give it away. They don't print those and be like, we're giving that just so the message gets out. No.
That's right.
They don't do that. So yeah, it is.
Nothing
And
is for free in Scientology.
what's
No.
that whole idea of exchange? And that's part of this mini disconnection is
Yeah.
that, it's a way to alienate you and exert that control. And I think what's amazing, it's like the group exerts the control on behalf of the Messiah,
Yeah.
right? It's like, you follow his policy. You're not following his policy. So I have the right to disconnect from you. Like, it's like, whoa, what? No, you don't. Your religion's making you, or everything you've done for the 30 years will be totally irrelevant and erased away.
Well,
And then
that's
for
the
a parent to
interesting thing.
choose that over their kids,
Yeah.
that's where it's just like, wow, how can you? And I've explained it to my kids. It's fanaticism over family. They're
Mhm.
fanatical about their faith, and they've chosen that over everything.
And the
So-
fact that you can just have, like, literally, you could be a OT 8 and class 9 auditor, class 12 auditor, and everything just gets canceled like that.
Right,
Like, you
right,
didn't do any of that work. They
Yeah.
cancel all your certs and awards
right.
instantly.
Your
Yep.
certs and awards, everything you've
Gone.
ever done. So when I knew when I
Hundreds of thousands of
left,
dollars.
right, when I left Scientology, and the Sea Org, I didn't have a driver's license.
Mhm.
I didn't
Oh,
have
God.
anything. I drove all over because I had car school. So I'd been driving since I did car school. I'd been driving pretty much.
No.
But in the real world, that doesn't translate. Like writing out resumes, I
I
built
know.
multi-million-dollar underground storage facilities. I brokered deals with like $10 million deals with Caterpillar. I did it, yeah, right. You're 22. Are you serious
Yeah.
right now? And then,
Yeah.
like, who could you call? Yeah, no, he doesn't exist. He's a bad person.
References, right?
Yeah. Oh, that
Right.
guy
There's
did work
no,
for us.
yeah.
I
It's, yeah. So even when you
had
get
the
to that
same
point where you
problem.
can do that, those are the obstacles. And that a lot of people, it just beats you down. It just causes you to recoil because then you just feel like the biggest imbecile in the world, like, so
Yeah.
it's kind of, and there's no support structure. Even the Mormons and I think the Jehovah Witnesses to a degree, they have shunning, but you're allowed to like go to a barbecue with the family. They just don't talk
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
They just
you
like
can live
stay
in
on the other
same
side of the
town.
room and are like, you really, you need to go to
You're
the
just
temple.
an observer.
And it's like, I was like, damn, that's really okay. I could do that kind of disconnection a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
better than just like, you are done. You don't
Yeah.
exist to me.
Yeah, it's pretty
So,
final.
Literally.
It's hard. It's
It's
even
one
when
of
you
the
recover
reasons-
from it, it's hard.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I actually didn't want to have employment. Like, I didn't want to be employed by somebody else. I couldn't handle like somebody telling me what to do, or it was just too triggering for me. That's why I
Right.
was
No, I can see
self-employed.
that. Right.
Best way to be anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it has its
Oddly
pitfalls,
enough,
though.
right. I guess. I mean, after I think the best part of resiliency is the more you grow, the more you learn, you know.
Yeah.
I think my biggest weakness on resiliency is is establishing like a support structure.
Hmm.
Mhm.
You know, the rest of the stuff I'm pretty good, you know, like, okay, I've thrown myself off enough cliffs. I've been thrown off enough cliffs. Like, it's not an abyss. I'll probably land. I'll probably land hard, you know, but I'll
Yeah.
lick my wounds and this will pass, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm going to accept this change or like a new. I remember thinking, like, well, I guess this is like a new chapter of my life, you know, and trying to embrace it. And even when I was like on the streets, um, it was, it was one of those things that was like, this is something I deserve. It's almost like a pen, like Dante's
Mhm.
Inferno kind of, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's a level of that. And, but you hope and you accept the change that comes your way. And sometimes it's on a daily or an hourly basis. And, you know, as you recover, it's more like on a monthly or yearly kind of basis. But, um,
Peaks and valleys, right?
right. No, absolutely. There's,
Dylan,
I think that, you know, what's, go ahead.
what? I was going to
No, I was,
ask you a question. Speaking of resilience, like
mhm,
an example, like after most of the hard part was when I got out. And that's when all the disconnection obviously happened and my father passed and my sister passed. And then and there was a whole bunch of shit that went on in between that. And it was like each one of these, like, for lack of a better word, losses just seemed to sort of, it just keeps knocking you down kind of thing, and then you have
mm,
to sort of build up that resilience again. And then my husband gets cancer, pancreatic cancer.
mm,
And I thought, are you fucking kidding me? Like, somebody throw me a bone. Like,
right.
that, those kind of challenges that you get hit with in life after experiencing these like 26 years of, life in a cult. Like, this is the hard part for me. It's kind of like, how do you just keep being resilient?
Yeah.
How do you just keep going instead? I mean, I'm not one to give up. That's just kind of my tenaciousness. I just keep going, but
Right.
like, spiritually, it's tough. It's really tough to just keep coming back, you know? How
Well,
do you deal with shit
what's
like that?
the basic urge for existence?
Survive.
Survival.
And what's your
That's
motto, Dylan? We
that's
come
a
back.
we
We
come
come
back. No, I hear you. Gosh darn it. I'm so sorry about that. I hear you for sure.
Yeah.
And I know that's hard. Um, I don't know, to be honest. I know when I left the Sea Org, I fell really hard and I did it. I caved myself in, I guess I'm using Scientology,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that's fine.
a bit.
Communicate.
And, um, I, I, I basically was like, okay, I'm a degraded being. I'm an SP. And so, um, I remember after I got my SP declare at my friend's house, I packed, they were gone or what. I'd been sleeping on the couch. It wasn't a long-term thing anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I just packed up pretty much my letter and what I was wearing. I escaped the RPF
Yeah.
based on the RPF. So I was wearing my boiler suit, like black boiler
Oh, the
suit.
black one?
Wow.
Oh
Um,
God.
so
That's it?
yeah, that's what I
No
left the Sea Org
belongings,
with.
nothing.
No,
Oh.
and then yeah, later down the road, they said they sold a bunch of my stuff and applied it to my freeloader debt. Um,
That
but
makes me really angry.
and then, well, they couldn't ever find,
Fucking
there's
weird.
yeah, we could go into some other weird
Wow.
stuff, but
Yeah.
see how
Wow.
good I am at avoiding this part of me. So,
Well,
anyways, I took my letter and I just walked out the door, and that was it. And I was homeless for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years.
Are you
It's really a
kidding?
blur. Like a lot of it's a blur.
Mm.
But I know that there's those. That's why I think those pathways are carved out sometimes. Is even like, to this day, when I drive somewhere, I look for places to sleep, and I look for places to like that are safe. That I was like, ooh, I could probably, that would be okay to like sleep for the night, or because that's kind of what it was. If you sleep in the safe places when you're homeless, those are really dangerous. Like bridges and stuff like that are like, people live under those.
Yeah.
And you are a visitor in their space. So, it's not uncommon to be woken up being mugged, or being, um, like your space being extremely close to someone else. and
Jesus.
and even like getting food, or even having the concept, going from a place that you're the most ethical group on the planet, to like having to steal things, or to eat out of dumpsters, or to like eat, like, or not eat, just because you're like, okay, it's it's better not to sometimes. I think. But even with that, like, that resiliency is, you try to stay positive, and you try to accept where you're at. And for me, I had a lot of mental baggage with Scientology. So I was trying to, understand and justify where I was at. And as I was doing that, I was trying to unravel all these things in my head that I couldn't get out of my head. Like, my basic ideas of life were all Scientology.
Right.
Life is in me today. I make my own tomorrows. I believe that with my heart. Only way I ever learned that was LRH.
Right.
That was LRH. That wasn't Mark Twain. There's like 4 or 5 people that said that, like 50 years before he said that. So that's part of that journey. And I think when you have that rough landing, is you either force yourself to live, and it's not like I had a purpose other than to just survive. Like,
Yeah.
I tried dying, it didn't work. It didn't. And so I tried to find reasons to live, and I would flirt with that. But then I started paying attention. When I had those valleys, there would be signs, because I would start to look for them.
Mm.
And that's what hope is, right? And that's what, that's how you can laugh about your journey, is because it's either live or die. And if you let go of that fight or flight, like, what kind of takes its place is acceptance. And you start accepting where you are, and that you aren't much different. We're all created pretty equally,
Yeah. Pretty much.
as human beings. So then what is the true thing that we have to give each other? Time and space, love and light. Those are the things that we can give those anywhere. When I saw the Serge Obolinski video, that guy has light in him, and he never lost that.
Yeah.
Even though he should have so many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
He had
that's
every
resilience.
reason to, as did you.
Right. And so those are the things that, that's kind of why I do all this. And that's why, is we all of our stories are absolutely important.
Yeah.
And us speaking our truth is better than doing what Jeff and I do a lot, which is sit immobilized in the living room and not do anything. And so, I mean that in the
nice
nicest
way.
way possible.
No, it is true though. Like, it's so difficult, like, if someone's around, and I think this is a really big teaching of Scientology, is you're taught to hide what you're really feeling.
Mm.
And it's the hardest thing to get over, because I just want to not do anything. I just want to just be away from everybody, but you can't always do that. And so you throw on that joy of creating, and you put on a smiley face, and you make shit up,
Wax
and
enthusiasm.
wax
Enthusiasm.
enthusiastic, all this stuff, right? But
Right.
it never brings any kind of healing or change to your condition,
Right.
right? So you just constantly do it, and it's
Well,
so damaging,
wow.
because
It
it
is.
creates
Wow.
a consistent it creates a habit, right?
Mm.
Like it becomes automatic. It creates that pathway in your brain that when
Right.
this is happening, this is the way you go. And it's so difficult sometimes. And I
When you
honestly
save
think I
all
might
your
die right now.
vulnerability, right? And you save all that vulnerability for your session, of which you pay for,
Hundreds of dollars per hour.
right? And if you don't pay hundreds of dollars, you pay with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's the other part, is if you can't pay with money, and you're looked at, if you can't, like, that David Miscavige did that interview with Ted Koppel, and
Mhm.
he said in part of it, he's like, oh no, we only deal with the able.
Mhm.
We only deal with people that, they make money. They don't, there's money's just a consideration. That's something that you can just have. That's an inflow outflow thing. You just raise your haviness. That's all you do. And then you can have more money. And it's like, right.
Fucking magical. Fucking
But it
magical. buddy.
saves all that stuff, like all these things that we all need and reach for, or don't, or are taught not to. No, the only
Mhm.
place you deal with any of this vulnerability is in session. And it's like, whoa. And these people are telling you what you need next. And if you need correction,
Yes.
and if you can't get far enough, oh no, you need to get some admin under you. You need to get trained so you can have
Yeah.
mass, right? And then you can deal with your vulnerability. So it's this ultimate control of how you're allowed to feel and express yourself in this guise of this is most right. And it's a hard thing to unravel when you're a child and you have no choice, and that's harder to do than it is if you, I guess it's equally as hard if you get in because your ruin is like the one thing that they can solve. Well, everybody's gonna, we have trouble right here in River City.
Yeah.
With a capital T, and it rhymes with P, and it stands for pool. And that's the trouble, it's that idea of creating this emergency for a group of people, and they're like, oh my God, I need that. We need to not have that there. And it's, so what's worse, like being indoctrinated in it? The only thing I say is a lot of the people that indoctrinated themselves or found their ruin are doubling down, because it's almost embarrassing to say I've spent most of my life hurting people, and like that's hard.
Yeah. I've been embarrassed to say I was in a cult. I don't
Right.
tell people.
It's
I've
not,
learned
you don't
not
lead
to
with
talk
that,
about
right?
it.
Exactly.
Well, and
'Cause
I was
people
told
look
by
at you
that.
weird.
I was told
Yeah.
by a Scientologist, the black cowboy hat guy in Portland, to enjoy my wretched life.
Right.
Like that's
What a
what a
fucking asshole.
what a
Sorry.
thing to
Well,
say to somebody.
and that's
Enjoy
their
your wretched
policy.
life.
Yes.
Right. And they're
Yes.
like,
You
if
know?
you look at the, like, Mark Bunker, who's relevant right now because he's running for city,
Council.
Clearwater Council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would go to him in LA and be like, oh yeah, you're a pervert, huh? I can see it. I can see it in your face. Oh yeah, what are your crimes? Tell me your crimes.
That's
Like
Harris
that was their
Markopoulos.
right. That was their go-to playbook until
Yeah.
Anonymous, and they were like, oh, that's out PR. We can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And we're
He's
being
talking about,
Disgusting.
he's talking about like animals and stuff like that. Do you like
Right.
animals there, Mark?
You like animals? Oh yeah, you're a pervert. I can tell.
What
Like,
kind
oh
of
my God.
disgusting imagination these guys
Right.
have? But I get it. Like that's what you're told to do, or at least
Well, and that's when you say, well, that's projection, sir. And you should
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
talk to somebody about that.
Like, what's your favorite animal?
Right.
I know it's crazy, and yeah, it's so difficult.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
that was funny.
All right, let's move on.
Shall we?
Just want to acknowledge one of the biggest supporters, I think, for most of the SPTV channels is Laura Waldy, who donated 5 memberships to people.
Aw,
It's
right
amazing
on.
how much
Go,
Laura gives.
Laura. It's your birthday.
It's truly amazing.
Affinity
they got
for me.
Sharon
Sorry.
Serendipity with the super chat. Reprogramming your mind and speech after leaving a cult can be compared to learning a new language. You know the new words and where to use them, but you don't think in that new language. That's a really good
So
point.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you learn it, but you're
It's,
in it. At least for me, my initial response is to go with Scientology, or at least for the most part. But it, over the years, it is changing. Is it changing for you guys too, or?
I like to use like when I'm talking and when it's appropriate, I like to use that terminology as like a catharticism, but back it up with the same meaning in like the diagnostic and statistics manual, like
Mhm.
and give some actual like, triangulation, manipulation, gaslighting, these kind of things and show that you have both, like kind of keep that, like, so you kind of associate what you think in Scientology to what's real, because we all words are made up and
Mhm.
we just attach
Yeah.
sound meaning to sound. So yeah,
If there's
what's
anything we're
accepted
learning
right
from these
now.
days,
Right,
Yeah.
words don't mean anything,
right.
unless we
It's the
give it meaning.
inflection,
Yeah.
right?
It's the
Dylan, did you
inflection.
do the Key to Life course and the life orientation course?
Life orientation wasn't out yet before I went up to CST, but I did the original um rollout of the KTL, yes.
Oh wow.
Mm.
Okay.
And all I got for counseling in the Sea Org was FPRD.
That's not counseling.
Right.
That's sec
That's
checking.
a multiple
all I
life
got,
set
pretty much.
checking.
Yeah, yeah, that's brutal. I never had the joy of that. I just had custom tailored confessionals.
Right.
Yes.
Well, those
Did,
were,
Jeff.
I still have my cert too.
right from passing your custom sec check, tailor made
Yeah.
sec check.
Isn't that gross?
Apparently,
get
Would
apparently
a
you
they
like to write a
missed the goal.
success story? You're like,
Yeah.
I
I
did.
should, right?
And then you
I did.
have to go to graduation and tell everybody how wonderful it was.
Right. Having all my overts
It's
and
so
withholds pulled.
sick.
It's like
It was
Yeah.
horrible.
past life.
I even made
Right.
stuff up. I
Right.
literally made up past life stuff. And I said to the auditor, Scott Iverson, who's still there auditing, I said, I'm making this up. Like,
Pretty
just
sure
tell me
I saw
anyway.
this in a movie.
Yeah, exactly. And actually it was a documentary, but like, he's just like, just say it, because it was a long
Well,
session. I think it was like a
right.
4-hour session at that point, and he just wanted it to be over, and my needle
Yeah.
floated,
You
so it
probably
must have
had
been a
to
real
pay
Yeah.
thing, right?
It's like, yay.
Yeah.
LFBD.
I was usually pretty
Yeah.
good at making my needle float on command as much as possible, and I could
Right.
tell Scott
Same.
wanted me to, because he'd be like looking at me like,
That's it, right? At the end of this chain,
"You're
we're
okay,
done,
right?" And I'm
right?
like, I just realized something, and then oh, your
There,
needle's floating. Oh, thank God.
that
Let
poor
me get out of
guy,
here.
he was doing the same job. He's still doing the same job, and he's been there for over 30 years, 35
Something like
years,
that, yeah.
doing the
Yeah.
same thing. He's
Yeah,
like the only class
all the guys
5.
in Vancouver, they're
Like
they're the old hat. There's very few new people there.
Right.
I'm thinking about, we
It's
wanna
like
say
sort
hi
of
to them on
melded
Sunday.
into the building now, like as part of the furniture and the walls and stuff.
I don't know why they even leave. They might as well just stay there.
right. Or they're under the
So
radar
sad.
and just kind of keep away from everything.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, there's
kinda
a
crazy.
lot. There's a lot in the Vancouver field, and I probably even more so in the Toronto field that
Yeah.
are under the radar. It's
And
really sad
and
that still
just to make
afraid.
Andy very, very paranoid, there's a couple that are in touch with me. So your staff members, my
Yeah.
friend. Hi, Andy. All right. Let's move on.
Okay.
Auntie, being human comes with its own set of trauma, but
Yeah.
Scientology seems to be designed to cause it. I would agree with
Mhm.
that statement.
Good statement.
Me too.
Definitely.
Yeah. Question from Buffy
Mm.
Lynn. How do you balance the empathy versus blame? Meaning your parents raised you in, and the way the thought was best, but they were also conned by a really good con man.
Mm.
That is a
How
hard
do you
one.
Yeah.
balance the empathy versus blame? That's probably more for you guys than me.
It might be even beyond me. We might have to throw this to Dylan.
Well,
Well, they did
I,
think they were doing the best that they could, right?
Yeah. I can make a
you
comment
know,
regarding my mother specifically. My mom was very hardcore into Scientology, especially when I was much younger, before parents got divorced. And I remember her laying in a lot of ethics on me. But, having talked to her later on in life, before she had passed last year, I really got to know her a bit more as to what her intentions were, and she was a very caring person. And so she was a firm believer, and she just wanted the best for me, and she thought she was doing the right thing. Um, so I don't blame her for anything that she did, and anything I did to her was forgiven. Um, but I think that's the important thing to keep in mind, is that everyone's just trying to do their best, and if they're conned by someone and they're doing the wrong thing, as long as they can recognize that later on, that's kind of what's important, because we all make mistakes. Learning from those mistakes is the important thing.
Right. No, absolutely. Um, yeah, blame versus empathy. Boy, I've gone back and forth on this one, to be honest. Um, I've used a lot of that feeling of blame or feeling of like anger and aggression
Mm-hmm.
to kind of motivate some healing, and to, you know, be okay to be angry sometimes. And I guess at the end of the day is you have to lead with acceptance over expectations, and you have to you can't imbue yourself with like a sense of self-righteousness once you've
Mm.
decided to be on a healing journey or survive. That's where you ultimately have to forgive everybody else, and ultimately you have to forgive yourself,
Yeah.
and you have to um just try to live.
Oh,
And
he did it again.
would it be hard to have a conversation with my father? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want him to know my kids. I don't know. You know, he's gone. My oldest is 15 years old. So he's never met either of my children.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it. They've seen my old videos I did 5 years ago, and, you know, are like, Dad, what's going on?
Mhm.
And it's hard. I want to believe that I would have acceptance, but I know for sure at this point I would set a whole crap load of healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And I would, I would want to be codependent, but I've done that. I did that when I got married, and I was like, oh, I can fix you. I can do this. Look at what I went through. you know, so I'll be, and
Yeah.
that's part of the, that's also the thing that I could like really be mad at myself, or I could be like, wow, that was one of the better learning experiences. Did it hurt? Hell yeah. But now I learned that I have some value.
Mhm.
And it took 14 years after I left the call, after I was homeless, after I thought I got tools in my toolbox to deal with life and I was doing okay. I went into a relationship with an antisocial personality, and
Wow.
they don't really know because it's easy to see when you're there. It's not hard to see why people act the way they are,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
what's hard to do is say, when somebody can't or won't understand you, you have to understand. And that's hard to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, the more times I make myself relive that trauma, the more I realize I'm not healed. And I have to, either start, like, I'm now to the point where I feel like I have to trust myself, and I have to love myself.
Mm.
And that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have kids, you can be like, oh, I don't matter willfully because I just pour into them. And it's like, but I have to
And
keep
it's
my
easy to do that.
right.
It's easy to pour into others.
Right. No, it is.
That's
It's a defense mechanism almost, right? Like,
yeah.
so it's,
Yeah. It's I don't matter. I will just do whatever I can to, like, I know I'll admit it. I do it with my husband. I will do everything under the sun, moon, and stars. When he had cancer, I did
right.
everything. And that's what I thought was the best thing to do. But it wasn't, because I went to shit. But
Right. And see, that's
it's
exactly
easy
it
to give.
is
It's easy to
right.
give.
But then it becomes, that's what you nailed it. You nailed it, is you give and it till it hurts, and then you can't give anymore.
Yeah.
So you have
And
to
then I lose
love
my
and
shit.
be right. And I love giving. I love being able to be here and share space with you both and be able to share in your healing journey. And the only way I can do that is because I give myself a little bit of grace that is why I'm here. And I want to be here to hold space for people that have had this kind of experience. Because at one point you can go to therapist, you can do this, you can be told, hey, get over it. But we got to heal as a group.
Yeah.
We have shared trauma, and this is the way we can cope and move forward.
Yeah.
You know,
And this group
so
is hurting right now.
it
Yeah.
is. It is. Yeah, I know.
It's
It's
very apparent. So, wow. Gabe, is there anything else you wanted to say on this, or should we move on?
Thank you, Buffy Lynn,
Yeah,
for
that's a
that
great
comment.
question.
That was a
Yeah.
really a
Look
great
at what you
comment.
started.
Look at what you
Oh,
did.
Look at what
And look
you
at all these
did.
people: the SP Chef, Hans Christian Schwartz, Smooth Steve SPTV, new members. Yeah, for whose channel? You Jeff?
I
Oh,
think
I
I'm
don't
the only
have
one that
members.
has channels on
Oh,
or
nice.
memberships
Yeah,
set up. But you guys
I'm
should definitely
totally.
set it up. It's a great way.
He's my moderator. Lou is my moderator. I don't know if you saw him there, but he's
What
my
kind of
moderator.
dog is
So
that? He's huge.
he's a Saint Bernard.
Yeah.
Uh,
He's beautiful. Oh,
I've got my dog. Well, he's gone now, but he's been freaking out next to me here.
why?
He doesn't like when I
Won't
go
get him.
live.
Really?
Oh, he's
He'll
jealous.
sit there. He won't come up. He won't bother me. As soon as I go live, he's like freaking out down here. Pay attention to me.
funny.
Pay attention to me. Who are you talking
Right?
to? Yeah.
You can't actually see Merlin. He's hidden in the blanket. There's his little eyes. Can you see that?
he's
You can see
camouflaged.
one
Oh
eye.
yeah. No,
There you
I've
go.
been checking
He's
him out.
wiggling.
He's been.
Yeah.
He is
Keeping an
pretty
eye on you.
camouflaged. He'd be hard to find in the snow. That's for sure.
Definitely.
All right.
Okay. What else? Who else? More stars.
More stars. Adorable Anarchy says, how does a Scientologist think they are quote unquote saving the world by not taking an active role, but rather a passive one? I am really enjoying about your journey. That's a great question.
I know.
Oh, Dylan, what do you think about this?
I think that like the way Scientology is set up is it's the ultimate selfish religion. It's the ultimate me religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about you being a thetan, you being it's your spirituality, and that's all it is. It's not about like that's why the dynamics are like, oh, the third dynamic is the third dynamic. That's not you. You are the ultimate source, and you're the one that has the urge towards survival.
Mm-hmm.
So everything in Scientology is geared to only help the individual. And so it's easy. And what are the impediments to helping the individual? Well, family would be one. If you were the person that was trying to sell them a religion, that would be an impediment because they would want their whole family to survive. And Scientology only wants the individual thetan to survive. Even in the OT levels, what do? You get rid of all these other thetans that are clinging out. You don't help them. You get them the crap out of there so your thetan can be the most purest. Right. And so it's the
Such a good
ultimate
activity.
selfish religion. When I was in the Sea Org, it's weird when in the Sea Org you have a kind of a disdain for the public because they're so selfish. All they do is try to go in session, be sessionable,
Oh my God, of
and they're
Yeah.
right. And you're doing
Not
like
just Sea Org, though.
what is your estimation of effort? Like, do you see what we're like, up your estimation a little bit here.
That's
my
right.
God.
But that's kind of speaks to that of like, and I think the true product, like a true OT is like a Sea Org or staff member because you are made to be there comfortably and confront anything with no human emotion reaction, no case on post. You make it go right. You do no matter what. Like in this, I'm sure staff Sea Org, if we were doing something at CST and we had orders out to people and it looked like it wasn't going to make it during the time machine that it was allotted, you're damn right. We'd be calling CEOs of companies and saying, hey, who's your logistics manager? Can we get them over to the warehouse to put that on the truck? Because I need this to be here by Monday.
Yeah.
You know, it's like people are like,
Move
what?
mountains.
No, that's not how it works. Like, no, we don't do that. And you're like, yes, we do, because we have a
Yeah.
truck on the way right now, and they're
Yeah.
going to be at your loading dock at 2 a.m. And all I need you to do is get off your and get a forklift and put that on the truck, and we'll
You
be
make
fine.
it go right.
It's exactly
Right.
how you operate.
Yeah.
And all the time, every
It
day,
doesn't work
24/7.
outside.
Like, we worked 120 hours a week in the Sea Org, 120
Yeah.
hours a week, every week.
You
And
must
I'm
have
sure,
thought
I know
that
staff did the
class
same.
Well, class 5 org staff, you guys must have thought that we were kind of dilettantes, right?
Right.
Having a
Totally
regular
working like
regular-
90, 80, 90 hours.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically our schedule was only 40 hours a week. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
but
on
nobody
top
did
of
that.
our other job. That was another 40 or so hours. But yeah, you must have thought we were just pathetic.
Well, you sent,
I
I
always, yeah.
was around
ahead.
when the parent issue came out, and I had just gotten married, actually,
Mm,
when there was no more kids in the Sea Org.
wow.
And for me, that was really weird, because I had met my soulmate in the Sea Org. We had both signed billion-year contracts. And of course we were like, you wouldn't, you know, you look back at it now and you're like, why wouldn't they want those people to have kids? Because you're guaranteeing more Scientology. It was so counterintuitive. Even being in it at the time, it felt counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You know, it
But
was like the
that's
LRH death
big.
event. It was the same
Yeah.
thing. You know, it was like we were R factored at our org prior to the death event, that we were not to show any emotion. We were to produce.
Really?
We were to get immediately back on post and get our stats up. And that's what
Wow.
LRH would have wanted. And so it was like, even with that idea of like, and that sounds weird, I'm sure, to a lot of people that were never in, but when you were in the Sea Org and you were like in the messenger org, it had a whole different, there was a lot of grief, and grief is not okay in the Sea Org at all,
No.
period.
Very
it's
low
bad.
tone.
Right.
Very low tones. You're so close to apathy and body death at that point.
Right. Exactly.
Basically useless, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
to answer this question a little bit more, because I think we kind of went on a bit of a tangent, but
Yeah, Dylan.
Dylan, see, can we mute
I
this
will
guy?
self-shame. I am sorry.
Awesome.
So my answer to this is a very quick one. You see it as in a passive role, or a passive thing, what Scientologists are doing. But as I learned from my visit to Seattle, my infiltration of their org briefly, the guy who was talking to me, who's been in for a while, his viewpoint on everything is that, particularly during the pandemic, everybody else in the world went to sleep. Those were his terms.
That's
So
right.
he
They
actually
went
looks at
Anakin.
you having a passive role in helping the planet, whereas they're the only
Not
ones
at
that are
all.
actually doing anything about it. And this is a genuine opinion of this guy, right? Like they have such disdain, and they look down on regular people for being Homo sapiens and humans and dealing with all their emotions and health and stuff, right? Like this is an active thought process for these guys, and it was clearly on display during my visit. And I don't know how they expect anybody to join with that kind of attitude, but
Right.
I
That's
digress
crazy.
on that.
Yeah.
What about you, Gabe? Is there anything you want to add to this one before
Well,
we
I
move on?
I thought I was very active in saving the world.
Yeah, you're the only one that's
Recruiting
doing it.
people. Recruiting people. I mean, I look back and it's just a lot of busy work, but I worked pretty hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was always there late, but you know, I remember when coming back from Los Angeles after flunking out on my training, walking through the doors, out the doors of the airport, and looking at my city, and this thought, I've never lost this thought, and that the thought was, how am I ever gonna clear this place? Those were the exact I was just like it was insane. Like I left Vancouver to go to Toronto, or to go to LA, and I was only on staff for maybe 6 months. And then I spent a year and a half in Los Angeles under the Sea Org, like basically in the Sea Org, more or less, but I was still, a staff training person. So I got the magnitude of, what it means to be a staff member and all that indoctrination stuff. So I had that was the idea. I'm a staff member. My purpose is to clear this planet. And I did the life orientation course where you rip your life apart and you find your purpose in life. So, I was very well indoctrinated into this idea that this is what I'm going to do. And then I get off the plane and I go through the doors and it's like, I can't do this. And that was
Oh my God.
and that was like when I first started, right? Anyways, it must have not left me. It stuck. It really stuck because it was just this very clear thought that stuck in my head. Anyways,
It's
yeah.
such an impossible task. Like it's funny because I've got a couple leaked videos from some FSMs, and both the videos they talk about what's going to take to clear the planet and how many people they need and how many clears they need and how it's like, how do you do this math and still carry on? It's amazing to me, the dedication. It's admirable, really, but even they know it's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, you don't think about it that much. You just put your, nose to the grindstone and you just do your thing as a staff member, right?
Yeah. And in
honestly,
fact,
yeah.
If you start putting thought, or sorry, time and what's called mess into thought, it actually, according to Scientology, messes up the theta and the thought involved in it, right? So you're not supposed to be adding any of this, all these considerations and stuff into thought. You're just supposed to do. Don't think.
Right.
Thinking is bad, right?
Yeah,
Thinking is bad in Scientology.
Yeah,
don't be theta the problem, be theta the solver.
I hated that. I still hate that.
Me too.
All right. Born Ancient here. Question for all three of us. Gabe, you'll go first. Have you received therapy, whether in the past or currently? What types of therapy have you found to be most helpful to you? I should say, please answer if you feel like answering in any kind of detail. But you can go first.
Yes, I've had some therapy. It was okay. I've actually done more education in the area of cults and mind control and psychology and stuff like that. I think that's probably helped me more than the other part. Yeah, and I'm currently involved in a what's it called? A religious trauma group.
Yeah,
I like
a support group.
groups.
Yeah. We're both in it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
What about you, Dylan?
And the similarities are insanely the same. It's crazy.
Right.
I know.
Right.
It is crazy, hey?
And there's some pretty messed up religions out there.
Indeed.
There are.
Especially the family ones.
Yeah. Through the pandemic, there was an app that started called Clubhouse, and it's just an audio app. And it was kind of a platform similar to YouTube where you have people in the bottom and you can go up and speak. And a lot of the people, the kids that grew up in Scientology, a few other ex-Scientologists, but a lot of Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, Quiverin, a lot of those fundamental religions. We ended up getting a really good mix and doing twice a week, just chats.
Oh, cool.
And it was great. We did it for about a year and a half, and then it sort of, YouTube got bigger and whatnot. But yeah, when I it's weird. I never know how to say it. Like when I got done being homeless, like when I decided to stop doing that stuff, try a new business adventure. I got into the California education system, and I matriculated my way into Cuesta College, and they offer like free therapy services. So once I was a full-time student at Cuesta and Cal Poly, I went to and took counseling almost on a daily basis for like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And it helped a lot to resolve. One thing I learned early on in counseling is a lot of people are so interested in your story that you then tell them your story. And then I felt like for me, I was disingenuous because I could say whatever I wanted. And I could tell them whatever, and I became more of the teacher and not, I needed to build trust with somebody, and I was giving them it was hard because they were so, and it's fascinating. I get it. We all love to watch car crashes and those kind of things. And I don't mind being that was part of, I think, the journey was explaining it in basic educational terms. Help me get closer to feeling it. So I was able to, like verbalize it in this way where I didn't have to be it. And that's why I think coming back now and talking about stuff is so helpful, is that you're then able to go and experience it more and really feel like what it was and understand that trauma more. It's like ripping off, if we have wounds and we just keep putting Band-Aids on, that infection never gets healed. We got to rip and sometimes we can't rip all those Band-Aids off, especially for a lot of people that have endured extreme trauma, like abuse and child abuse and all those trigger words that I don't want to say because I care about everybody in the chat and I don't want you to be triggered. And if you are, please reach out to somebody. Reach out to me. I have an email, anything, but talk to somebody because that's important. Being able to reach and not having that rejected. That's part of how we start building trust. And for a lot of really, a lot of trauma survivors, it's hard to reestablish that in those areas that we've been traumatized. So, I'll get off my tangent now.
Awesome tangent.
That was my therapy thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think that's very valuable, and it's amazing. For me, very much in line with what you did, Gabe, is at least for the first 10 years of my recovery, I really focused on education. Last year, I launched into YouTube. I went pretty hard into it and sharing my story and stuff, and in line with what you're talking about, dealing with ripping too many Band-Aids off at once. I did rip off a bit too much and I had to step away for a bit because I really, not just because I was sharing my story, but I was also intaking a lot of people's trauma as well, which wasn't something one, I was used to, and two, I didn't realize how that was going to affect my own trauma and how it was going to sort of attach itself to me. And so I did step away for a little bit. And now I've kind of worked on setting boundaries and so forth for myself, where I can more actively monitor and then step away if need be. So that's been very helpful for me. As far as actual therapy, this week was different because I don't think it happened, but I go to 3 support groups per week and I talk about and listen sometimes just listen and just communicate. Like there was one day I didn't even turn, it's on Zoom, right? So it's worldwide, whatever. But I didn't even turn on my camera. I just said, hey, I'm here to listen. That's it. And I just sort of sat here and listened, and that was really helpful. So
yeah, no, it is. It is. It's not even helpful in the way that I feel so like, I don't know. I don't want to say blessed. It's hard. I feel like, for somebody else to share their trauma and let me, share that space with them it's so, I never knew how amazing that was.
It's incredibly powerful.
It is. It really is to share in someone's vulnerability and let them come out the other side of that and feel empowered instead of less than, which is a lot of what we were made to feel. I always have time for that. 100%.
Yeah. And it's what I've heard from people I've talked to, what they really say to me that they need the most is just somebody to listen,
Right.
because you never had that. Nobody listened.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. It was time, place, form, and event. Move to the beginning of that incident, run through it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Pick up any
Yeah.
additional information you can
Right.
contact.
that's
Right.
right.
And is there an earlier, similar withhold?
Right. Is
Or-
there?
yeah.
Damn it, we're doing it. I thought that was it.
No, there isn't. There isn't. All right, cool. Thank you very much, Born Ancient, for that amazing question. I think that opened up a lot of
Mhm.
conversation. And thank you both for sharing. This is great.
Absolutely. I'm glad.
All right. We got 3 more, and then we're probably gonna
All
end
right.
off. We're coming up on 2 hours here. But super chat from Acupunk. Thank you very much. Just wanting to thank and acknowledge all of you for speaking out. Quite a journey.
Thanks for
Very
being
well
here and
done, you
sharing.
two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks,
Very well
Acupunk. I
done.
appreciate you being here.
I'll send you a commendation.
Yeah, VWD.
Yeah.
ML Dill.
ML Dill. ML Dill. I like that. Make a shirt about that. All right, Auntie, question. Is there a definite number on how many people must become Scientologists to have cleared the planet? That's a really good question.
That
only
is the
thing-
source.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's no
I-
actual answer to that question in Scientology
No.
specifically, but go ahead,
But
Gabe.
there is something that I kind of thought about, because there was that big push for 10,000 people onto
Solonauts.
Solonauts. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
OTs.
trying to
Right.
think.
It'll tip the
So-
scale now.
Exactly.
No.
So that
not
was the bullshit story, right? Because
Right.
it was the theta and theta ratio, blah blah blah, and yeah, tipping the scales, and that was supposed to actually help with planetary clearing.
Right.
Interestingly, I have stats on how that's going, and it's not going very well. So they're not even there yet.
Imagine that, right?
But you know what?
Let's do
It was
square
also-
paces. Square paces is an affluence, though. What are you talking about?
Oh, it's phenomenal. Like getting into these ideal org events and these stats that they're throwing out there.
Right.
All the important ones are generalized. Like everything's in
Right.
affluence. It's like,
Number
does
of
that
people
mean?
curious.
yeah, but like,
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot of curious people
Oh,
for
there's
sure.
curious.
We're in affluence. We're doing great.
yeah. Oh my God, somebody asked me a question about Scientology.
They were curious. Did you see how many views the Super Bowl ad got?
Yeah. Millions. And how many of those were bought?
That's right.
How many of those were me making fun of it?
Oh. I
And
was
anyway,
I was in charge of all the stats, right? So I would see all these. I had to know all these stats, and there was some of them that were just like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what does this have to do with anything?" Anyways,
Which is hilarious because the LRH policy on it, on class 4 or class 5 orgs, because of everything got twappied, was VSD. That was supposed to be the main stat for any org, period. Value of services delivered. Right. And there's but it's supposed to be, because it's red on white, it's an HCOB, Hubbard Communications Office Bulletin. It's senior. That's senior. Tech is senior to admin, senior to everything. So that was supposed to, and then GI became more of a, and then when the IAS was, see, this is all, when you like to really enjoy Scientology, you have to become a historian, and you have to really start to look back at how it grew and developed. There's key policies like Simon Bolivar, KSW. When those came out, you can look at what was happening in Scientology, and there was a lot of weird power struggles and stuff going on. And then even when the first acknowledgement of when LRH was basically never going to come back, and pretty much everybody knew that he was sick, was when the Mission Network happened. When when they ended up closing the Mission Network, that was pretty much that, like, in management going into this, we need to reinvent the entire organization, because it was never meant to have a leader. It was never the way the organization. And it was on purpose. It wasn't. It's funny how all these people are like, oh well, he forgot. And no, he didn't. He was
No.
always going to be the leader. He was look at the Mormon religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like Joseph Smith is their guy.
Yeah.
Like he's
the
hanging out
dude.
at the top planet where no women and kids are allowed, and they're chilling, playing pinochle or whatever it is they do. And that's what the Mormons believe, and that's great. I appreciate that. But that's how LRH had it set up too. He was going to be there was no David Miscavige and LRH. It was never
Right.
meant. So he had to reinvent the whole structure. That's why he had to do all that weird crap and make up titles and change and corporate restructure. And his ode was Author Services and CST.
Right.
And that's where he justified, this is how I'll get the all clear. And this is why I need to be the one guy in charge, because I'm the only person that can make this happen. And now everybody's like, well, who's going to be the next one in charge? It's like nobody, because it was never meant to be that way. You think
Right.
David Miscavige wants somebody to succeed him? Hell no. Because he wants to be as close to Ella. He wants to be that guy, and he can never be that guy. But he certainly doesn't want somebody else to be that guy. That's not how that narcissism works.
And there's evidence of that, which I will be releasing in this Ideal Org video, where they're literally referring to him. Sea Org members are referring to him as leader,
Right, leader.
like
Not
dear
source,
leader.
but really close
Honestly,
to source.
dear leader. Like this is like it's crazy. It's crazy, the fanaticism.
It's close.
Right, exactly. A legend in his own mind. Like
Yeah,
that's all it
exactly.
really is. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, you never, and it's funny. Honestly, I think the best way to look at DM is as a poor defenseless child that never had a choice.
Yeah.
And that honest, and everybody's like, oh my God, he's such a this. You're right, he is. And he was abused as a child. He was called names. He watched his mother get abused by his father. And then he escaped and made LRH his father, which is the ultimate narcissist, psychopathic megalomaniac. And he just learned and that's what Scientology is, the ultimate selfish, ego-driven religion.
Yeah.
And that's what, if you have the predisposition and it's in your genes to be a psychopath, Scientology is perfect for you.
Mhm.
Yep.
And those are the ones that usually really succeed in it.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where that delineation comes of like blame and others. Like at what point do these innocent children now become unredeemable?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's hard because they've made that choice themselves. A lot of us that didn't are sitting right here because we woke up and we're like, no, I thought we were making the world a better place. And when I figured out we weren't, I left.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
At personal risk to myself, because I lost my whole family. I lost my wife. I lost my life. I lost everything, as we all did.
Yep.
And that's, that's exactly, I think that's what the difference, it's hard to accept that, like knowing that instinctively and intuitively that we had to leave. And these other people are like and they're still doing it. They're still doing the same thing. And, I hope they heal. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully this conversation can help open up doors for people. And that's kind of the point of it, right?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
To the answer to this question, Auntie, we have no idea.
Nope. No clue.
And neither does any Scientologist. So
No.
That's great.
When I was a kid,
that.
they said, everybody had to be cleared. It had to be a cleared. That was the total jest.
Yeah.
Was, and then it became like, well, if we get 50%, it'll just go from there. The tide will turn. And then it became, if we can get this many people through the solo knots, we should be.
Yeah. It's pretty
so
bad.
it's changing, and it always will.
Yeah. It's just
And
nothing
OT
means
9
anything.
and 10 will never be released.
Yeah. And
Right,
it's a
because he fired David Mayo and the people that were writing them all. So screwed up on that one.
Whoops.
Oh, man. All right. This is our last question, my friends.
Okay.
Dreamscape question: since LRH stole and perverted tenets from many legitimate therapies, I worry that some therapies could be triggering. Has this been a barrier to any of the panel, which I guess is us, that you've heard of? I haven't personally.
I found it odd to go to therapy at first.
Oh yeah.
I was expecting way more structure.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. You know, it's like, isn't it like an auditing session?
Yeah.
Ask me some
Where's my
questions
command?
and I'll answer some.
Weren't we playing
It was-
rudes? Did you even know? Do you even care if I'm sessionable? Like,
I'm kind of hungry right now.
right. I just had
Great,
2
well, the clock is
aspirin.
still
I don't know what you
But
guys are
it was
talking.
weird. It was weird for me at first. It was just like it wasn't structured. It was kind of like, okay, well, tell me what you want to talk about, kind of thing. And I'm like,
Right.
huh?
How does that make you feel? I don't know. How does it make you
What?
feel? It's
I'm
like,
just
yeah,
feeling me.
right.
Oh God, it was odd. But
For me,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Triggering, yes.
Yeah.
Doctors, yes. Triggering, dentists, yes. I grew up like taking handfuls of vitamins, niacin every day. I grew up, my dad was like part of that whole Northern California cow mag. We drank, like we did it all every day as a kid. It was part of it. Any kind of reporter or doctor, when I go to the doctor now, I have to go when the door shuts, I feel like I'm going to never get out of there. I feel like I'm going to be trapped there forever and I will be institutionalized and that'll be the end of my life.
Wow.
So I have to talk to my doctor for a while before he takes my blood pressure. Otherwise,
this is just a regular doctor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't, for that whole, and I know it's stupid. I do. And now so my defense mechanisms are so amazing that I divert it from like the get-go. So I'm like, like, oh yeah, the appointment next week that I have no intention of going to, absolutely sounds good. It's like, well, there's only so much healing you can do, right? I got to pick and choose my battles. So it's hard to confront. It's a lot of triggering, it is very triggering. And there is a barrier there for me. And I think part of it is my dad was a musician and a hippie generation in San Francisco. When I was born, they lived in the Haight-Ashbury. So I was in the thick of it. As far as like the hippie Scientology, like it was, that is a very real pathway that I understand and can see, but I haven't been able to fix. So I just live with it, that's what you do.
That's
you can only do what you can do.
Right.
So do you drink CalMag?
No, I don't do, I'm trying to think if I have any Scientology habits left over.
We do vitamins.
I take extremely fast showers. So that's kind of a Scientology thing.
30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. I still kind of do that.
No joke.
I eat quickly. I still eat quickly.
Yeah. I
you
kind of stop, but I do. Like today, I had no reason to. I grabbed food and I ate it while I was doing something else. Eating is such a secondary thing. Like if I'm working, I'll eat while I'm working and keep work so I can be productive. It's like so stupid. Or when I'm driving somewhere. But those are those hidden triggers that you don't really realize. And hopefully one day I'll love and care about myself enough to give myself that grace to do that. But, I mean, it's I guess it's a minor one, so it's not that big of a deal. I hope.
Well,
no,
guys.
MDM, no, that EMDR, no, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Acupuncture, like
thing that
it's
yeah.
I'm not a brainwashable person anymore. I don't I don't do that. And I don't live. It's weird. I think one of the things, and I think you guys can, because it seems like it to me, is that leaving and one of the byproducts of being an ex is being here right now all the time, being in present time, and there's good parts of that and there's bad parts of that, and I think that's it saved me, but it's also it's like we talked about in the beginning of this. It's really not conducive to being vulnerable and to doing those things. Is like you just want to be okay. That was then. Okay, we're moving on. You know, I'm right here comfortably confronting. It's like, no, you're not. That's a defense mechanism, Dylan,
Mhm,
and you
mhm.
need to stop. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
Meditation,
scares them.
that whole idea also is to put you into is to keep you into a present time. I sometimes have a
right,
little bit of a hard time with that one.
Yeah.
definitely, no, for sure.
When I think to bring everything full circle before we end off here, being in a cult and escaping a cult really, really builds up our walls and resilience towards anything that could potentially trap us again. You know,
Well
we're
put.
able to
Yeah.
see it for what it is, as well as protect ourselves against it as best we can. So,
Yeah, and we're learning how to be resilient, I think. I think that's an ongoing journey.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I would say also it gives us the ability to make choices, even
Yeah.
to make bad choices.
Yep.
It's like, and that's something that we never had. We only had one choice, and it was allegiance to policy and allegiance to
Yeah.
source. And now we, even if we're like, oh, this could, you know, there's some bad parts and some good parts, but I'm going to do this. If you do it intentionally, at least it's your choice and you can own it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
part of it. So yeah, I agree. Very well put.
Yeah, it'll release some of the harm, even if you did something bad. It was your
Right.
decision. It
Right.
wasn't
And
an
it,
abusive thing at that point. It was you
right.
deciding to do it.
And you
Right.
can own it, you know, and that's the
Yeah.
difference
And you
is
can learn
owning
from
your
it.
mistakes. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And learning from it. Because I fuck up all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't generally fuck up twice the same way.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
whereas Scientology, it's like banging your head against the wall. You're always doing the same thing over and over and over again, but never
Right.
getting good results. It's insanity.
Yep. It is. Yeah, absolutely. It
Yeah.
really is.
Thank you guys very much for joining me today. This is an amazing chat. Thank you to everyone in the chat there and on the replay crew. I'm sure there'll be plenty of that. Do make sure that everyone is subscribed to channels. I will say that there has been mass unsubscribing by YouTube for some reason. I don't know why they do it. But if you are intended to be subscribed to all of our channels, please do double check that you are, because there's a chance you're not anymore. Anything you guys would like to say before we end this chat?
I would just like to say thank you so much, you guys, for creating this space and inviting me into it. I really appreciate sharing this time with you guys, for sure.
I loved every minute of it, you guys. You two are wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I'm so glad you showed up, Dylan. I'm so
Yeah,
glad.
absolutely. Hey, let's,
Yeah.
you know, when we can, let's, you know, continue. There's lots of little avenues
so
we could
many.
probably diverge down and
So many avenues.
it would definitely probably help us all. And that's definitely what I love. Let's, you know, like, let's maybe next time we'll, and the chat's been amazing. You know,
Yeah.
I've been trying to
Yeah.
watch. So, and that's part of what I want to try to do too, is like, there's so many people that they're here because they can relate. Like, how can we engage with those, you know, people more? I almost want to do interviews with like people in the chat and be like, let's talk and share our, you know, experiences and find shared places where we can heal or hold space, or, you know, I think that's such an important thing, you know, and really give everybody a voice. So
Yeah. Well,
I
we can
agree.
always
Appreciate it.
have a show where you actually just answer from the chat, whatever comes up,
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
and have just the chat engage and ask questions or sort of reply to comments and stuff like that. That's always fun. I love
100.
perspective. I love listening to other people's perspective. You know, it helps
Right.
me so much.
So it seems like
Exactly.
we have more lives planned.
Yeah, let's,
Could
yeah,
be.
yeah, for
I
sure.
think so.
Cool. Sounds good, guys. Well, again, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time. Nola, how's it going?
Fuck's sake.
For fuck's sake, she says. What's your post?
Well, what are you doing?
I'm not on staff, that's for sure.
You're definitely filming something.
Anyway, I gotta go because I'm gonna get in shit if I keep talking to you. You know that.
But doesn't that